Every June 14th, my boss signs the catering invoice for someone else's champagne fountain and says she forgot I work here. I used to think it was an accident until she booked a violin trio for a coworker's work anniversary on my exact 5-year mark and asked me to handle logistics. That's when I stopped telling myself stories and started writing things down. My name's Dan. I'm the guy who keeps the ugly plumbing of a mid-sized tech company from bursting, procurement codes, vendor risk, purchase orders that don't match the pretty slides. If the sales deck is the face, I'm the person flossing the teeth no one wants to admit are there. I don't dress loud, I don't speak loud, and I don't spill. It turns out those are the exact traits that get you erased in an office obsessed with noise. Miranda, my boss, is fluent in noise. Every sentence sounds like it's been ironed. She says things like, signal the behaviors we want to scale, while forwarding invoices for balloon arches. She has a favorite, Evan from Strategic Initiatives, a title that means projects that look good in photos. Evan's got the poise of someone who's never had to open Excel and the jawline to match the swag hoodies he orders for himself and calls Team Swag. For his first work anniversary, Miranda booked a conference room, a grazing table, and a custom neon sign, Evan won. She gave a speech about our culture of recognition while I was under a desk trying to unjam a receipt scanner so finance could close. My first anniversary, a calendar invite to a one-on-one that got bumped 3 times and then quietly vanished. We should do something next week, Miranda said in the hallway walking past. Next week became after QBR, which became never. I told myself it was fine. I'm not big on cake. But people notice what you normalize, and she normalized pretending I was wallpaper. Year 2, Evan's party had a chocolate fountain. The invoice went through as employee engagement, departmental. When finance asked about the amount, Miranda replied, all with a paragraph about belonging. She CC'd me to make sure the PO aligns. I routed it. I also watched her walk past my desk, stop, tilt her head, and say, oh, didn't your work anniversary happen recently? Yesterday, I said. Let's circle back, she said, already moving. I screenshotted the email chain, printed it, and slid it into a thin manila folder I'd labeled with a date and a single phrase. Recognition, spend patterns. I didn't start that folder out of spite. I started it because the only protection a quiet person has is paper. Year 3, the Evan 3 party needed dry ice for a fog moment. Evan handed me a corporate card and a wink like I was his PA. Love you, man, he said, already practicing a toast about this crazy ride. I rejected the card usage twice under my own compliance rule. No hazardous materials purchased without vendor clearance, and forwarded Miranda the policy she'd signed. She called me an hour later. Be flexible, she said, flat voice, smile I could hear. We're celebrating someone who makes this place run. I looked around my desk at the stack of vendor questionnaires I'd personally chased down so we wouldn't fail a quarterly audit. We sure are, I said, and approved the dry ice through a vendor who actually met standards. I kept that thread too. It wasn't just the parties. It was the slow theft. A dashboard I built, Evan demoed it at all hands without my name on the slide. A promotion cycle where my impact was praised and my visibility was questioned. Visibility is a metric invented to reward the loud. That cycle, HR lost a form that would have made me bonus eligible. Administrative error, the email said. The payout pool had already closed. We'll correct it next year, Miranda promised. Next year came and went, and the correction never did. I archived the promise in my folder, then added another. A printed org chart with a highlighter mark through my name, where someone had misspelled it in an announcement. By the 4th year, I'd stopped waiting for a sheet cake with my name piped on it wrong. When Miranda said, let's do something, I said, no need? She looked relieved in a way she didn't bother to mask. Evan's party that year featured a gratitude wall, where people wrote notes on pastel cards and clipped them to twine with mini clothespins. Someone wrote, Couldn't do it without Evan. I watched Evan photograph that card from 3 angles, chin angled like a billboard. I wrote nothing and went back to the ticket queue, where the things that keep companies from getting sued go to die unless someone like me triages them. People think being overlooked makes you bitter. Mostly it makes you precise. I learned who signs what dollar amounts slip under which thresholds, how to split an invoice to avoid a secondary approval, how to schedule a compliance review so it collides with a calendar event no one can move. I learned that employee engagement is the drawer where receipts go to become ideas. I learned that if you write the policy, you can also write the trigger that disables your own admin rights the moment you resign, so no one can walk you back into the mess they made. By spring of year 5, my phone buzzed with a recruiter who didn't speak in slogans. Northline Analytics wanted someone boringly excellent to own procurement risk and build the thing I'd built here from scratch, with my name on the slide. We talked for an hour about the difference between control and control theater. He asked what I'd need to feel safe. I said, autonomy, a seat at the table. 2 headcount for people like me who get ignored until the lights go out. He said yes to all 3. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. I looked at my folder, now fat and heavy, and I didn't think revenge. I thought proof. Then Miranda sent an email with the kind of cheeriness that means someone else will do the work. Team! We're celebrating Even 5 on June 14th. His contributions have shaped our culture. Dan, can you handle the logistics? We're going classy this time. Charcuterie stations, live strings, maybe a signature cocktail. Loop in finance for approvals. Evan, start your speech. Keep it humble, but personal. Iggs Emmels, June 14th is my start date. She knows. She signed my offer. I stared at that email for a long minute, then added 1 line to my calendar at 10 a.m. that day. Submit resignation, effective immediately. I scheduled a third-party compliance audit for that same morning. Pre-approved months ago, routine. The kind that drags finance into a room and forces them to reconcile what the policy says with what the invoices show. I drafted a handover Miranda would never read and cued an access rule I'd written last winter. Upon voluntary exit, all delegated approvals revert to the CFO's office, and any in-flight purchases tagged engagement require live finance sign-off. The week before, the building's lobby sprouted silver mannequins and glass pedestals like a pop-up museum of money. Someone ordered a neon sign that read Evan Fee, Roman numerals for gravitas. Evan did a walkthrough with a vendor while on speakerphone. I want it to feel like an award show, he said. People should cry. He practiced his laugh while a florist counted peonies. I went downstairs to the loading dock and watched a driver sign for a crate labeled strings, handle gently. I verified the PO number. It matched a line item. Wellness activation. That night, I cleaned out my desk in the least cinematic way possible. No boxes, no performative goodbyes. I took the plant I'd grown from a broken stem and a coffee mug that said, risky business, someone had given me as a joke. I slid 3 sealed packets into my backpack, finance, HR, audit, labeled with dates, highlights, and the kind of receipts that make even polished people stop speaking in complete sentences. I put the manila folder on top and zipped it closed. On the morning of June 14th, I came in early. The atrium smelled like cut flowers and rental carpet. A quartet tuned up in the corner, the soft scrape of bows against strings. Evan tried on his jacket in a mirrored column, smoothing the lapel as if the glass were an audience. Miranda stood near the staircase in a blue blazer that said, Executive, and a smile that said, Camera. She saw me and waved 2 fingers. Can you run point with the caterer? Finance is being prickly about codes. On it, I said, and opened my laptop. I clicked 1 button I'd named plainly, Exit Protocol. A confirmation window bloomed. Resignation effective 10 a.m. Delegate approvals to finance. Lock engagement POs pending review. I didn't hit submit yet. I watched the clock tick to 9:14. Evan did a mic check for a mic that didn't need checking. Miranda checked her reflection in her phone and practiced the sentence. We are who we celebrate. I thought about who I'd become by not being celebrated, and I waited. The thing about office politics is that it always looks cleaner from the outside. From a distance, Evan's parties were just another team morale thing, a photo op for the company's social feed. But if you knew where to look, really look, you could see the invisible machinery humming beneath the cake crumbs and plastic champagne flutes. I built that machinery. When I started, I thought compliance was just about preventing mistakes. It took me 4 years to understand it's mostly about documenting hypocrisy in a way that can survive a courtroom. Every employee engagement expense Miranda approved was structured like a shell game. Split the invoice under $5,000, route it through 2 departments, label it as training materials, then bury it in the quarterly summary as staff development. The photos of Evan cutting into a 600er cake were posted with hashtags like my culture notch growth. No one checked that the line item growth session was billed the same day at the same catering company for the same amount. No one but me. At first, I kept track out of morbid curiosity. Then it became self-defense. The deeper I looked, the more patterns I found. And not just financial ones. Miranda had built an ecosystem where loyalty was currency. Evan gave her validation. She gave him visibility. Everyone else just made sure the lights stayed on. The real work, the integrations, the client audits, the vendor reviews, happened in silence because noise was reserved for celebration, not competence. The irony was that the company's own compliance rules gave me leverage. Miranda had once asked me to streamline vendor access controls, meaning she wanted fewer sign-offs. I rewrote the process so that a single administrator, me, had to verify every new supplier, especially in the engagement category. I didn't think of it as revenge at the time, just risk mitigation, but risk, it turns out, can flow both ways. Around that same time, a recruiter from Northline Analytics found me through a professional group. Their compliance lead had left, and they needed someone who could design systems that actually worked. The offer came quietly, full benefits, a pay bump that didn't feel insulting, and the magic words, "You'll report directly to the CFO." I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest coworker, Nina, who shared my dry sense of humor and my disgust for performative culture. I gave Northline my tentative yes, with one condition. Let me finish out the quarter. I wanted my exit to look clean. Then the final insult landed. A week before Evan's Evan 5 gala, Miranda called me into her office. "Dan," she said, "I need you to pre-clear the purchase orders for the event before the weekend." "The ones labeled Employee Wellness?" I asked. She smiled like I'd said something adorable. "You know how these things are. Finance doesn't need the details, just approvals. Keep it tidy." There it was again, that tone. The one that assumed I'd comply because that's what I do. I stared at her, taking in the tidy desk, the framed certificate from a Women in Leadership conference, the diffused citrus scent she used to make the place feel less like power and more like mentorship. "How much are we spending?" I asked. "Don't worry about the total. I'm the one approving it. I have to worry," she sighed. "Dan, it's not about the money. It's about morale. Evan's been instrumental this year. I expect you to show the same team spirit." That word, spirit, landed like a slap. When I got back to my desk, I opened the purchase order queue. 5 invoices, one for catering, one for decor, one for photography, one for entertainment, and one mysterious venue fee. The combined total was just under the limit that required CFO approval. 5 splits, same vendor network, all marked as training. Clean on paper. I clicked approve on none of them. Instead, I created a duplicate batch, labeled pending compliance audit, and quietly forwarded the originals to the external auditors I'd scheduled weeks earlier. The subject line, Cycle review sample. By the time the first thank you emails from the vendors rolled in, my name was on every internal CC thread. Evan's assistant sent a note. Dan, you're the best. Couldn't do this without you. I stared at it until my monitor dimmed. The next morning, the building buzzed like a hive. Boxes of wine glasses stacked in the hallway, printed seating charts, rental cables snaking across the floor. Evan strutted through the chaos in a tailored blazer, rehearsing lines for his speech. It's not just about me, he said to a passing intern. It's about what we built together. The intern nodded like she believed him. At my desk, I finalized my resignation letter. It was plain, surgical, dated June 14th, 10 a.m. I attached my signed offer from Northline to the draft email, just to remind myself this wasn't about escape. It was about arrival. Then I opened the manila folder, the one labeled Recognition Spend Patterns. I flipped through the printed emails, the cross-referenced PO codes, the screenshots of calendar invites that never included me. Each page was a quiet indictment, not just of Miranda, but of every person who decided silence was safer than fairness. It wasn't rage I felt, it was clarity. Before I left that night, I tested the exit protocol trigger again. The automation worked perfectly. At the exact timestamp of my resignation, all my delegated approvals would revert to finance. Miranda's open invoices would freeze in queue until manual review. I also scheduled one final recurring audit, timed for the same morning as the gala. Not a fake one. A legitimate compliance review the CFO had already authorized months ago but forgotten about. A real one, with an external auditor who didn't care about birthdays or hashtags. At 11:59 p.m., I clicked schedule. When I woke up the next morning, I wasn't anxious. I was still. I brewed coffee, watched the steam curl over my apartment counter, and packed my backpack, laptop, resignation envelope, 3 sealed packets. By 8:30, I was in the office. The atrium smelled like roses and rented confidence. Miranda swept through with a clipboard, chirping orders to the event staff. Dan, make sure the expense codes match, she called over her shoulder. They will, I said. Evan grinned, spinning a gold pen between his fingers. Big day, huh? You ready for the speech? I smiled. Yeah, I've been preparing it for a while. He laughed, clueless, the kind of laugh that fills a room and empties it of meaning. By 9:45, the florist was setting centerpieces on mirrored tables. The quartet was unpacking instruments. The first guests, upper management, trickled in early to snag photos before the official start. Miranda stood at the podium, adjusting the microphone, testing phrases under her breath. We celebrate excellence. No. We celebrate the people who make excellence possible. I watched her reflection in the glass wall of the conference room, then glanced at the clock. 9:58. I opened my laptop. The cursor blinked on the resignation email. I typed one line in bold at the top, effective immediately. Then I hit send. For a second, nothing happened. Then a faint chime. The system acknowledgement. My admin rights evaporated in real time. Access revoked, delegation cleared, all employee engagement, purchases redirected to finance pending review. At 10:01, my inbox exploded. From finance. PO codes misaligned, pending verification. From Miranda. Why are vendor payments frozen? From audit team. We've arrived for the compliance review. Is this a bad time? I looked up from the screen to the party floor below. Miranda's smile froze mid-sentence as her phone buzzed. Evan adjusted his cufflinks, unaware. The quartet struck a tentative chord, unsure whether to start or stop. I closed my laptop. The next movement belonged to them. By 10:05 a.m., the music had stopped, though no one seemed to notice at first. There's a kind of silence that only exists in offices. The silence where everyone pretends nothing's wrong, because the wrong thing might be contagious. That's what filled the atrium while Miranda's phone kept buzzing in her hand. Her smile didn't falter, not immediately, but her eyes gave her away. They darted toward the finance desk like she was watching a leak spread across the carpet. From my spot on the mezzanine, I could see the whole thing unfold. The floral arch, the untouched catering trays, the neon even V sign flickering softly behind a haze of stage lights that would never turn on. It was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it looked like a dress rehearsal for Panic. Finance manager Patel was the first to break formation. He came briskly through the crowd with a printout in his hand, his tie slightly askew. "Miranda," he said, low but sharp, "we have an issue." "Whatever it is," she said, still smiling, "handle it." "We can't process the vendor payments. The codes aren't matching. The approval chain's broken." "Then fix it," she snapped. "Dan can—" "He can't," Patel cut in. "Dan's not in the system anymore." That's when she looked up at me, just once, eyes narrowing like she'd spotted the loose thread too late. I didn't look away. Behind her, the third-party auditors entered, badges displayed, clipboards in hand, not the gotcha type, the quiet, methodical ones who ask simple questions that ruin careers. One of them greeted Patel, another checked their watch, and the last one, a woman with sharp eyes and a monotone voice, approached Miranda. "Ms. Cole," she said evenly, "we're here for the quarterly compliance review. You confirmed this morning's session, correct?" Miranda's smile was a weapon now, too polished to be real. "There must be some confusion. We're in the middle of an event." The auditor nodded. "We can wait. But finance asked us to begin with employee engagement expenditures for Q2. That falls under your department, right? If Panic has a sound, it's a phone vibrating against a hard surface while no one dares answer. By 10:20, the crowd was thinning. Upper management began doing the quiet shuffle of people trying to leave without admitting they're fleeing. The caterers stood in a frozen half-circle by the loading dock, trays in hand. The violinists had retreated to the corner, watching the scene like street performers who just realized they're at the wrong protest. I sat at my desk upstairs, pretending to type, though every keystroke was theater. The real work was already done. My resignation email had triggered a chain reaction that couldn't be reversed. All pending employee engagement POs now required finance's manual sign-off. Any over-budget split invoice automatically flagged for audit. In plain English, the party had no money. At 10:34, Miranda stormed into my office, or tried to. Her keycard clicked red against the lock. She pounded once, hard enough to make the glass tremble. I stood, opened the door, and let her in. "What did you do?" she hissed. "I resigned." "You froze my budget." "No," I said, calm. "The system did." "You built the system." "Correct." For a moment there was only her breathing, sharp, uneven, and the faint echo of violin tuning from downstairs. "You think this makes you look good?" she said finally. "You think the company will thank you for sabotaging an event?" "I think the audit will thank me for fixing the books." She stared at me, then lowered her voice. "You've been planning this." "Every year," I said. Her expression shifted. Something between anger and realization, like she'd finally seen the outline of the story she wasn't supposed to be in. "This will blow back on you," she whispered. "You're not protected." "I am," I said, sliding an envelope across the desk. "That's my notice. My exit interview is at noon. HR already scheduled it." She didn't take the envelope. She didn't have to. Because in that instant, her phone lit up again, Patel's name on the screen, and she knew the party wasn't her biggest problem anymore. Downstairs, finance had opened the first audit packet I'd prepared. Inside, 4 years of expense data, each entry cross-referenced to the company's policy on recognition spending. Every violation highlighted, every signature traceable, the same color-coded precision I'd used for everything else. By 11 a.m., the auditors had set up in Conference Room B. They weren't just reviewing numbers, they were investigating intent. The second packet, labeled HR, contained the forgotten anniversary records, missing bonus approvals, and one very specific email where Miranda wrote, "Visibility matters more than numbers." HR had signed that one too. While they worked, the party dissolved. Evan tried to keep it alive, made a toast to himself in front of a half-empty room, but even he could feel it. The laughter was forced, the photos awkward. When the caterers asked where to deliver the invoice, no one answered. By noon, Miranda's office door was closed, the blinds drawn, the kind of silence that means a career's ending had replaced the chatter. I left quietly, dropped my badge on my keyboard, walked past the flickering neon sign that still read, "Even fee," one bulb already burnt out. Outside, the sunlight hit like a stage light after a blackout. Too bright, too honest. As I stepped into the street, my phone buzzed, a message from Patel. "Audit wants to meet with you later today. CFO is impressed. Hope you're available." I typed back, "I won't be, but tell them to check the timestamps." Then I turned off the phone. I had a new one waiting at home, already synced to my Northline email. Inside that building, Miranda would be explaining things she didn't understand to people who suddenly remembered my name. Upstairs, finance would be untangling POs labeled employee engagement and wondering why they'd never questioned them sooner. And somewhere in that noise, Evan would be standing in front of a deflated balloon arch, holding a champagne flute filled with nothing, trying to laugh his way back into a story that had already ended. I didn't hate any of them. I didn't even feel triumphant. I just felt the kind of calm that comes from finally being seen, even if it's through the wreckage you left behind. The building that morning had smelled like roses. By the afternoon, it smelled like cold coffee and fear. The violinists had left. The catering crew packed up the trays of untouched food, wheeling them quietly through the lobby, while employees whispered in clusters around their monitors. The neon Evan V sign lay face down near the stage, a corner of its glass tubing cracked. It was still plugged in, buzzing faintly like a dying insect. By 1 p.m., finance had locked every discretionary account tied to Miranda's department. The news spread faster than the scent of spoiled cheese from the abandoned buffet. Someone from IT joked nervously that it's just a systems glitch. No one laughed. People were checking their inboxes like they expected subpoenas. Miranda hadn't come out of her office since the auditors arrived. Through the frosted glass, you could see movement, shadows pacing, papers waving, the CFO's silhouette leaning in, calm and deadly. Every few minutes, the blinds shifted slightly, like a trapped animal trying to spot an exit. And Evan, oh Evan, had gone from master of ceremonies to ghost. The man who loved microphones now couldn't find his voice. He sat on the edge of a desk, tie loosened, scrolling through his phone as if likes and comments could rewrite the day. His thank you speech was still open in a notes app, half finished, the cursor blinking at the line that said, "We rise by lifting others." The irony was so thick you could taste it. Around 2 p.m., HR called me into a conference room for my exit interview. The tone was oddly formal, like they were trying to prove they could follow procedure even while the building burned. "Dan," said Clara from HR, hands clasped around a tablet. "Before we begin, I need to confirm. Your resignation is voluntary?" "Entirely," I said. She nodded too quickly. "You're aware the company is conducting a review of recent expenditures related to employee engagement?" I finished for her. Her lips twitched. Yes, that. It seems you had significant involvement in the processes now under investigation." I met her eyes. I had involvement in making sure they worked. Behind her, one of the auditors slipped in, carrying a file box. He set it down on the table and began removing folders, dozens of them neatly labeled. I recognized my own handwriting. Recognition spend patterns, HR anomalies, PO chains. Each file like a chapter in a novel no one wanted to read aloud. The auditor didn't look at me when he spoke. "Mr. Mercer, just confirming you provided these voluntarily?" "I did. And you have no further access to internal systems?" "Correct. It's automatic." He nodded approvingly. "Elegant design." Clara blinked. "Excuse me?" The auditor almost smiled. Most resignations leave chaos. His left clarity. They didn't ask any more questions after that. When I stepped back into the hallway, the air felt different, still humid with tension, but lighter somehow, like the building itself had exhaled. Employees were moving quietly, methodically, as if afraid sudden motion would draw attention. A few glanced up when they saw me. Some nodded. One mouthed, "Thank you." I didn't respond. I wasn't their hero. I was just the guy who kept receipts. Through the glass wall of Miranda's office, I saw the CFO closing a folder and standing. Miranda remained seated, staring straight ahead. Her blazer looked heavier now, her perfect hair slightly wilted. The door opened. The CFO stepped out first, then gestured for her to follow. She did, wordless. HR joined them halfway down the hall. The sound of footsteps on the marble floor echoed like a slow drumbeat. No one clapped, no one spoke, but everyone watched. As they passed the reception area, Evan appeared from behind a pillar, eyes wide and pleading. "Miranda, what do I do?" he whispered. She didn't answer. She just kept walking until the elevator doors closed between them. Evan stood there for a few seconds, lost, then turned toward the finance wing. I could hear Patel's voice before I even reached the stairs. "Mr. Pike," Patel said sharply, "did you authorize these payments?" Evan stammered. I thought, Miranda, you thought wrong." Patel slid a document across the table. "Your signature's here, on 5 separate invoices." "I didn't know. She told me it was fine." "That's not how compliance works," Patel said. His tone was flat, professional, lethal. "Effective immediately, your corporate card is suspended. HR will inform you of your reassignment." A beat of silence. Then Patel looked up. "And Evan, you might want to find a new speech. The old one doesn't play anymore." By 3:30, Miranda was gone. Her name vanished from Slack. Her photo disappeared from the company's leadership page before the hour was out. Official statement: Miranda Cole has decided to pursue new opportunities. The oldest corporate lie in the book. Evan wasn't fired, not yet. Just demoted, temporarily reassigned to internal analytics, which meant a cubicle under the vent where printers go to die. I knew because Patel told me later in a short email. "Thanks for the heads up, Mercer. The house needed cleaning." I left my old building at 4 p.m. Sharp. No ceremony, no backward glance, just the faint hum of air conditioners and the smell of wilting roses following me out into the heat. As I crossed the street, I passed a dumpster behind the loading dock. Inside, discarded balloons, half-empty champagne bottles, a banner reading, "We celebrate excellence." The word excellence was torn straight down the middle. I didn't take a picture. I didn't need to. Some moments are better left undocumented, even for someone like me. That evening I sat at a diner 2 blocks away, nursing black coffee and scrolling through my personal email. One message caught my eye. Subject line, "Welcome to Northline." It wasn't the money that made me smile. It was the sentence in the body of the email. "We value people who build systems others can't break." Outside, the sun was setting over the glass buildings of downtown, tinting them gold. For once, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel forgotten. I just felt finished. Across the street, the lights in my old office flickered on automatically, timed for a party that would never happen. The neon sign inside glowed weakly through the glass, one letter at a time. EAN. The V was dead. A week later, I walked into my new office at Northline, and for the first time in years, no one looked through me. There was no marble lobby, no fake gratitude wall, no scent of curated citrus, just the hum of real work happening. People spoke softly, not because they were afraid, but because they didn't need to shout to be heard. My new boss, Laura Singh, met me at the door with a handshake and a smile that didn't look rehearsed. "Glad you're here, Dan," she said. "We've been running on duct tape since our last compliance lead left. I've heard stories about you." "Good ones, I hope," she laughed. "Depends on who's telling them. Around here, competence is the new controversy." It was strange how easily I slipped into the rhythm. No politics, no ego, just people solving problems and sharing credit. When someone thanked me for automating an audit trail, They actually meant it. When I spoke in a meeting, no one rephrased my idea to make it sound like their own. Still, habits die hard. On my first Friday, I caught myself checking the company calendar, half expecting to see someone's name plastered across a party invite. There was none. Just a team lunch at noon with the note, "Bring your appetite, not your ego." At 12:30, we gathered in the break room. Pizza boxes, soda cans, laughter that didn't sound forced. No speeches, no hashtags, just people eating together. Laura raised a slice like a toast. "Here's to quiet wins," she said. That night, I ordered lunch, catering from my old floor back at Cole and Partners. The people who'd worked hard and watched everything fall apart without ever getting credit. Nothing fancy, just sandwiches, fruit, and good coffee. The delivery note read, "For the ones who keep the lights on, DM. No sender name, no return address." But I heard later that Patel figured it out. He replied to my personal email with a single line. They all smiled. Even Nina, that was enough. 2 weeks later, I got a message from a blocked number. No words, just a photo, a half-eaten cake sitting on a conference table. The icing reading, "Congrats, Evan," the last surviving remnant of that day. The cake looked like it had been sitting out too long. The edges dried and cracked. One candle burned halfway down, leaning into the frosting like it was tired of pretending. I didn't respond. I'd already seen what happens to people who mistake recognition for validation. They end up trapped in rooms lit by flickering neon, defending budgets that should never have existed. Evan wasn't my enemy, not really. He was just the loudest symptom of a system that rewarded volume over value. And that system had finally turned on itself. From what Patel told me later, the board's internal report was brutal. Leadership failures, improper fund allocation, toxic recognition culture. The company's stock took a dip, but they'd survive. Most companies do. They'd rebrand, restructure, rebuild. But the echo of that party that wasn't would haunt them longer than any audit note. As for Miranda, last I heard, she'd joined a consultancy. Executive image coaching. The irony was delicious, but I didn't dwell on it. She'd spend the rest of her career teaching others how to look like leaders. I'd spend mind-building systems that made leadership unnecessary. A month after I joined Northline, Laura called me into her office. "You've got a good eye for people," she said. "Anyone from your old team you'd trust to bring over?" 2 names came to mind immediately. Nina from procurement and Leo from risk analysis. 2 of the quiet ones, the ones who did everything right and got none of the spotlight. "I'd trust them with my life," I said. A week later, they were both hired. On their first day, I brought in a small box of pastries from a bakery down the street. No balloons, no speeches. Just 3 cups of coffee, a stack of work, and the kind of laughter that comes from being free. Nina grinned. "You're really not going to give us a welcome party?" I shook my head. "We don't need confetti to know we matter." She raised her coffee in a mock toast. "To being invisible and invaluable," I smiled. "Not invisible anymore." Sometimes, on quiet mornings, I still open that old manila folder before I lock it away for good. Not to gloat, just to remind myself how easy it is to let silence turn into complicity. Every page is proof of what happens when people forget that fairness isn't a department, it's a decision. There's one email near the top that I always stop at. Miranda's message, 5 years ago. "Visibility matters more than numbers." She was wrong. Numbers outlast everything. They tell stories even after the storytellers are gone. Last Friday, I walked home past a bakery window. In the display sat a single leftover cake. White icing, gold letters. "Congrats, Evan." The same script, the same emptiness. It looked small now. Sad even. The kind of celebration built for no one. I stood there for a long moment, watching my reflection in the glass. Older, calmer, untethered. Then I turned away, hands in my pockets, and started walking toward the evening light spilling between the buildings. No applause, no neon, just quiet, exactly how I like it.